We know that we started off the day by hearing the arguments of the Uddhav Thackeray camp. Then just recently the Shinde faction began its arguments, and now I think the arguments are underway for the governor. So first take us through what the arguments were for the council of the Shinde faction.
Sarah, let me sum up the arguments by both the petitioner sides and also the respondent side in this case. The petitioner side, led by senior counsel Abhishek Manu Singhvi, who is appearing for Thackeray faction of Shiv Sena. He started by arguing that it is the Supreme Court who intervened, which intervened in the disqualification proceedings. It is because the disqualification proceedings have been interdicted by the Supreme Court, and that's why Supreme Court should also put on hold the floor test. According to him, if at all if the floor test was to be allowed, if the floor test is allowed for tomorrow, then all this, the entire disqualification proceedings will become infructuous. While he is also speaking about the previous cases or the past instances wherein Supreme Court allowed the floor test to carry on. But in this particular case, Abhishek Manu Singhvi said this is a peculiar case because this is the first time that Supreme Court intervened in a disqualification proceedings. Only because Supreme Court has intervened in this disqualification proceedings, wherein the notice period to respond to the disqualification proceeding has been extended at least till July 12, thereby asking the Deputy Speaker not to proceed ahead with the disqualification proceeding, and that's where Deputy Speaker hands are tied, and that's where if these rebel MLAs are to be allowed to vote in the floor test tomorrow, then the entire proceeding will become infructuous. According to him, if at all if the later stage of the Supreme Court finds that the Deputy Speaker is well within his right to proceed ahead with the disqualification proceeding, and if the Deputy Speaker disqualifies those MLAs, but those MLAs will be disqualified from the date, that is June 22nd, when Shiv Sena actually filed the complaint with the Deputy Speaker. If those MLAs who are facing disqualification from the date of June 22, how can they be allowed to vote in the floor test which is scheduled for June 30th? And that's why he said that because Supreme Court has intervened in the disqualification proceeding, the Supreme Court should also intervene in the floor test, and Supreme Court should put a hold on the floor test because both the floor test and also the disqualification proceedings are interconnected. That's the summation of the argument by Abhishek Manu Singhvi. Also, senior counsel Neeraj Kaul, who appeared for Eknath, Shinde, he argued saying that the disqualification proceeding and also the floor test are two separate proceeding. According to him, it's not the Supreme Court at this particular bench that has put on hold the disqualification proceeding, it's the law per se, because there is a no confidence motion against the Deputy Speaker, and that's why Deputy Speaker cannot go ahead with the disqualification proceeding. But whereas the Thackeray camp is trying to mislead the court, saying that because the Supreme Court has put on hold the disqualification proceeding, thereby Supreme Court should also put on hold the floor test. But according to him, that's not the case. The law per se has interdicted the Deputy Speaker from going ahead with the disqualification proceeding. That's the main counter argument of Neeraj Kaul. Also, another senior advocate and also former Additional Solicitor General Maninder Singh, who is appearing for the remaining MLAs, he argued saying that just even if we go by the argument of Abhishek Manu Singhvi, just because for the 16 rebel MLAs against whom the disqualification proceedings are pending, can the other 19 MLAs who are again asking for the floor test, can their right be curtailed? So just for the sake of 16 rebel MLAs, can the other 19 or 20 odd rebel MLAs right can be curtailed? That's the another argument from second senior counsel, who again appeared for the rebel MLAs. Also, the third very important argument by Solicitor General, who appeared for Governor Koshari in this particular case, he said that again, he repeated the same argument, saying that it's not the court, this particular bench has interdicted the disqualification proceedings, but the law per se has stopped the Deputy Speaker from going ahead with the disqualification proceedings. Also, very importantly, he said it's not just this particular, the numbers that has made the governor to proceed ahead like this, but also the situation of the atmosphere in Mumbai. He also said the law and order is also a threat, and that's why governor, taking everything in consideration, after detailed consideration, has asked the Chief Minister to prove his majority on the floor of the House tomorrow. So if at all if the floor test is stopped, curtailed, that goes against the very constitutionality of the functioning of the governor, and that's why there should not be any intervention on the floor test. So after both the sides completed their argument, now Abhishek Manu Singhvi, who is for the petitioner, is making his rejoinder argument. So we can expect this rejoinder argument to go on for 10 to 15 minutes, after which we can expect some kind of an interim order in this case.
All right, so you're expecting an interim order after the counter arguments made by the Uddhav Thackeray's legal camp. All right, Arvind, let's also bring in Saurabh Gupta. Saurabh, we saw, interestingly, even in the midst of all of this, even though as it goes down to the wire, we saw the Uddhav Thackeray government holding a cabinet meeting. The timing, of course, crucial as those rebels led by Eknath Shinde are challenging Mr Thackeray on the plank of ideology. What was your reading of the body language, etc., when they emerged out of that meeting? Because as at this point of time, it's really one camp versus the other saying that they have the numbers, and the other saying they don't actually have all of them. What are you hearing from the Thackeray camp about the morale right now? Is there an admission that the game may be over? And if so, will Uddhav Thackeray resign if the Supreme Court orders a floor test tomorrow?
Well, yes, if the Supreme Court orders a floor test tomorrow, then in all likelihood, the Chief Minister, Uddhav Thackeray, will resign even before the floor test. That's a likely possibility, given the fact that he's already someone who said that he's not behind the Chief Minister's post. He wasn't someone who wanted to be Chief Minister and is not desperate to cling on to the post. But he also wants to fight because he says this is about legacy. This is about Balasaheb Thackeray's legacy, and he wants to fight people who betrayed him. So that is why the government has said that, look, if you can push the disqualification proceedings and stop it and delay it and put a status quo on it, why not the floor test? Because the two are connected. That's the argument that Arvind was actually talking about, that how his lawyers have been arguing on what grounds. But the decisions of the cabinet today are best described as almost like a last hurrah, because, long pending decisions of the Shiv Sena, changing the name of Aurangabad to Sambhajinagar, changing the name of Osmanabad to Dharashiv. These are demands that have been pending for years, and these are Shiv Sainiks who've identified with these demands. So Uddhav Thackeray in his last cabinet meeting signing off on these decisions is a firm indicator of the fact that he still claims Balasaheb's legacy, even though the rebel camp wants to claim the same without actually coming and accepting the leadership of the current Thackeray. So this is what really it's all about. It's about leadership. It's about the legacy of the leadership of the party, as the party seems to be slipping out of control, with Eknath Shinde having more than 2/3 of the MLAs behind him. But it's not just the MLAs who matter. It's also the party functionaries who are firmly with Uddhav Thackeray. And at this point, this is a message to the cadre that, look, here is a Shiv Sena Chief Minister who has made sure that the long pending demands of the Shiv Sena are addressed.
Let's also bring in Akshay Dongre and my colleague joining us from Guwahati, Ratnadeep. Akshay, first to you, what's happening in Goa? When are the MLAs expected to arrive? What arrangements have been made for them?
Well, Sarah, there is a lot of ambiguity as far as the plans of the MLAs are concerned. We have seen this in Guwahati. Now we are seeing the same thing in Goa. Now, initially, even before taking off for Goa, there were a lot of ambiguity that whether the MLAs will either come to Goa, whether they will go to Surat. So there were a lot of questions that were being asked. But now one thing has become absolutely clear, that clearly somewhere the Bharatiya Janata Party is absolutely firm behind these MLAs, first in Surat, then in Guwahati. Now again, in Goa, all BJP ruled states. Where the MLAs are in fact very confidently going. As far as the security arrangements are concerned, there is huge security deployment that has already been done as far as the airport is concerned. And I would like to show around, the airport is actually empty right now from the inside. But when we talk about the security that has been deployed outside, there is quite a lot of security that has been, in fact. Now there was a question also being raised that where exactly will be what exactly will be the out route for the MLAs, whether they will take a special route or whether they will take the normal route. But it has been clear that there is only one exit as far as this airport is concerned, and that's exactly from where the MLAs, all of them will be coming out. Now also there are about 71 rooms approximately that have been booked in the Taj Convention Center here in Goa, near Panjim, and that exactly is the place where the MLAs are likely to stay. And around Panjim, around that resort as well, security has been beefed up. As far as the escorts are concerned, they are already waiting outside the airport. There are a lot of police officials that are waiting outside the airport. So a lot of arrangements have gone into place as far as this last leg of this defection is concerned, because if the Supreme Court goes ahead with the flow test, if they allows the flow test, then the MLAs will have to take off early in the morning for Mumbai, and that exactly is what what all of this planning, what all of this hopping one state to another was all about. So this is very crucial time for the BJP MLAs, the Shiv Sena MLAs who are here, and they are clearly getting support from the Bharatiya Janata Party, be it in Guwahati, be it in Goa now, and earlier in Surat. So all of this is going into the planning as far as the defection is concerned. Remains to be seen that when they go to Mumbai, what happens. That only Saurabh will be able to tell us. But here in Goa as well, the security has been beefed up across the airport as far as the anticipation of arrival of MLAs are concerned.